Hello and welcome back to Football Pass. I'm delighted to be joined by a very high-ranking official in Stuart Dougal, former referee here in Scotland and worked across UEFA and FIFA as well. Stuart, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure, Callum. Good to speak to you again.
The first thing I really need to get your view on is the situation that's encompassing Mike Dean just now down in England. He had 2 red cards in his last 2 games. He red carded Jan Bednarek at Old Trafford for a game between Southampton and Manchester United. And then he sent off West Ham's Thomas Soucek in a game between West Ham and Fulham just a few days ago now. Unfortunately, he's received a lot of abuse online, but that's now stemmed into him receiving death threats and his family being threatened. Just what's your reaction to that news? Because it's taken so many people by shock today.
It's terrible to hear, Callum, what Mike and his family are going through. You know, nobody goes into refereeing to pick up death threats ultimately towards not just him but his family. I think any right-minded fan, regardless of how emotional they can get during a game, realises that's just stepping over the mark by a long, long way. Referees have been subject to abuse over the years, and we're big enough and ugly enough to accept that. But when it gets to that level, then it's abhorrent, actually. You can't say it's disappointing. It's just abhorrent that people have got to go through that.
It is abhorrent. You've used the perfect word there for it. He's asked not to referee a game this weekend because of the current situation. Have you ever been in that situation yourself? And does that really highlight how badly he's been affected by this? The fact that he doesn't want to referee something that he clearly loves because he's been at the top level for so many years?
Well, at first, Callum, first of all, to answer the question, no. I'm glad to say I've not had death threats. I've had a couple of letters back in the day because they didn't have things such as social media when I was at my pulp, shall we say. But, a couple of letters, typical coward, no names, no details. If I was Mike Dean, I wouldn't be overly concerned about people who are hiding behind a keyboard. The police will tell you the guys that threaten you are rarely the guys that do anything. It's the ones that you don't know about are more of a concern. Personally, I would have continued to referee, and I'm a wee bit intrigued because I think I've just read earlier today that he's going to referee in the FA Cup potentially midweek, but not do the game at the weekend. So I would like to hear more about his actual reasons for not refereeing. If he's come out to say it's definitely because of the death threats, then that's a shame because I think the culprits then have won. But if there's maybe something else, if it was me, I'd be more concerned about I'm picking up 2 red cards and they've not been right. The decision has been wrong. That would be my concern, and I might want to be taken out of the firing line for a week or 2 just to compose myself and maybe analyse why I've been getting things wrong. And having watched 2 of the incidents, I don't think he gets it totally wrong immediately. I think you can see why he's done it. Now, I do think that retrospective action was correct and to overturn the red cards, but it wasn't as if there was nothing happened. So I do feel sorry for Mike, yeah, and it's not often I say that.
One of the aspects of refereeing I'm really interested to get your insight into, Stuart, is what happens when you make an error. As a football fan, when you're watching a game, you are either delighted with a decision that a referee has made or you're very angry because it's went against your team. A lot of football fans don't think about the referee, the man in the middle or the woman in the middle as a human being. What's it like when you know you've made an error, or you don't know when you're on the park and you watch it back and you think, I've got that one wrong?
I've got a few examples, sadly, over the years of my career, Callum, but it's horrible, because referees want to go out there, remain on notice, come back in. You pay the same money for that as you do for having an absolute nightmare or indeed a very, very tough match. But when you realise that you have got it wrong, then again, you try to analyse why. I would like to think a good referee will go and try and look at the videos, see if it's his positioning that was wrong or was his concentration maybe not as spot on. It hasn't been unheard for me and many other referees to apologise. Now, I know it's too late by then, but it's not as if we just go home and say, well, we've made that bad decision and that's up to the clubs to get on with it. So we do take it seriously, and we don't like making them. It's as simple as that. But it's an inevitable part of refereeing that you're going to make mistakes, and sadly, sometimes they're crucial mistakes.
Earlier, you said something that was particularly interesting. You talked about Mike Dean potentially wanting to be taken out the firing line because of the situation at the moment. Have you been in that situation yourself, Stuart, where you've thought, right, it's maybe best if I have a week away from this and come back afresh?
I think most fans would wish that I'd taken the back seat more often, Callum, but I'm glad to say that I think the way that the system works up here, and this is a hot topic, is that referees don't referee every week in the Premier League up here, and they didn't do it when I was refereeing the Premiership as well. Every few weeks you're taken out and taken into the First Division, occasionally the Second Division, and that's just to give you a breather. That's just to get you into a different way of refereeing. First Division's not any easier. It's just different. The skill levels generally a bit lower. The tolerance level from the players is a bit higher. Whereas the Premiership, they want fouls for most things, any kind of challenge, and we've seen how that game's going, the way the game's going over the years. I have asked to be sat down for a couple of weeks. No, would be the honest answer. But if the occasion had arisen, I would have had no hesitation. And again, it opens up, as I say, a can of worms, because I think the fans, and I've read it many times, and the players as well, thinking it's okay for referees. They can make a mistake, but they're refereeing next week and then they're refereeing the week after. Or occasionally when a referee has maybe made a major error the following week, he was scheduled to be in the First Division, but you see it reported he's been relegated or he's been dropped into the First Division. Well, that's not the case. It's just protecting all the referees throughout the season, and I think it's the right way to do it.
Referees in Scotland, Stuart, are part-time. They have a working life away from being in the centre of the field on a match day. Is that something you think helps referees in Scotland, because you can, for want of a better phrase, escape from the emotion of a Saturday 3 p.m?
You're right. It's definitely the right way. I think when it first broke, that the English referees were going full-time, and obviously we don't have the money and didn't have the money back then for us to follow suit. Probably initially we were a wee bit envious, because their preparation for games would be much better than ours, because we would be normally working at 9 to 5, and then I've seen it, maybe having to leave work early to drive up to Aberdeen for a game, kicking off at 7:30, 7:45, and then jumping in the car afterwards, back down the road, into bed for a few hours, and then back up to your work at 7:30, whatever time you were starting. So definitely better preparation as a match referee. But I think, as we've seen, and we did see it quite early on, there's no guarantees that you're going to get the decisions any more correct, whether you're full-time or part-time. It comes down to preparation. And again, I would take my hat off to the Scottish officials, past and present, who gave a lot of their own time, family time, to make sure that they're fit enough. They were picking up all the coaching tips, and then obviously going and doing the game. So it eats into a lot of family time, whereas if you're a full-time professional, you'd spend a wee bit more time at home.
In terms of Scotland and Scottish refereeing, the compliance officer has been quite busy in recent weeks with incidents linked to simulation and potential violent conduct. What's your opinion on the system we have in Scotland with the compliance officer? Is that something that you see as a positive from the referee's perspective?
I think there's an element of assistance there, because generally players should know that if they are going to try and deceive a referee, then there is somebody that's going to analyse their actions and retrospectively potentially have them suspended. So I do think that that's a positive. Whether it's the way that it's brought into play, I'm still a great believer in, as I understand the laws of the game still insist that really the referee, and the referee's decision, where he has had a clear view of the situation, and he doesn't think, or she doesn't think, that a mistake has been made, then that decision should be allowed to stand. But it is helpful that acts of violence, or any of the acts out with the vision of the referee, can be picked up and the perpetrator punished.
You mentioned the fact that referees can get that assistance and the retrospective action can be put into place. If Scotland had the money to implement VAR, as a former referee, is that something you would be in favour of to help the officials in the match situation?
Yeah, we all know that VAR's not perfect. And I did say way back when we were talking about it, be careful what you wish for, because sometimes it's actually just better to live with the referee's mistakes every now and again, as opposed to the game being stopped as many times as it's stopped when we watch it in England, and how marginal some of these decisions are. You know, it's hairbreadth decisions and probably disallowing goals more than allowing goals. The game's all about goals and entertainment. So if we could bring it in for, again, acts of violence, you know, serious foul play, serious misconduct, and clear and obvious errors, and that be both in offsides and decisions, then great. But when we're taking it to the nth degree, I do think that it's wasting it, both for the fans, the players, and even the match officials. However, having said all of that, it is excellent when you get an opportunity immediately to redress a situation that you've called wrong.
Brilliant. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us on Football Pass this evening.
Pleasure. Thanks, Cal.